Clara was sitting on the edge of the bed when she decided to record. It wasn't a grand announcement. No dramatic music, no overthought caption. Just a simple gesture, almost intimate, the kind you make when you believe you're finally in a safe place. The room was bright, late afternoon. The open window let in a light breeze, the kind that makes you think everything is starting right. She smiled at her phone camera. Not an exaggerated smile, a contained one, mature. The kind of smile that doesn't ask for approval. The video lasted less than 15 seconds. She wrote a short caption, deleted it twice, and finally chose something neutral. No declarations, no eternal promises, just enough to claim it without exposing too much. Her finger hovered over the publish button. Clara took a deep breath. It was curious how quickly everything had happened. She and Raphael had started seeing each other in mid-November. First casual, then frequent, then intense in that quiet way. No fights, no scenes, no drama, at least not at the beginning. He was attentive, present, always responded quickly, always said he liked her calmness. That with Clara, everything seemed simple, and she believed it. In December, he asked her to be his girlfriend for the first time. Clara didn't accept, not for lack of desire, but because she wanted something more concrete. A gesture, a thoughtful date, not a request thrown in the middle of a conversation. Raphael understood, or pretended to understand. He asked again a few days later, and then again. Clara would smile, deflect, say she still wanted to do it the right way. On the outside, everything seemed mature. Inside, something was already starting to tighten, but she couldn't explain what. During Christmas week, they spent it apart. Clara wanted to stay with her grandmother. Raphael said he'd stay with his mother. It seemed normal, adult, calm. They spoke little that night. He said he was tired, that he'd go to sleep early. She wished him good night. Nothing seemed wrong. New Year's was different. They spent it together, laughed, made small plans. Raphael slept at her place, said he was living through a great phase, that he felt at peace. On January 1st, he asked her to be his girlfriend again. This time, Clara accepted, with one simple condition, to make it official another day, more calmly. Raphael agreed, kissed her forehead, said he would wait. Everything seemed aligned. That's why, in early January, posting the video seemed natural, a gesture of confirmation, a silent, "This is it," to the world. Clara pressed publish. She put her phone on the bed and went to shower. When she came back, the phone was vibrating non-stop. Likes, comments, messages from friends, people saying, "Finally, you two match. Congratulations." She smiled. And then, in the middle of all that, a different notification appeared. A message in her DMs, from someone she didn't follow. Clara opened it without hurry. The first sentence was too polite to be an attack. "Hi, sorry to bother you like this." She thought about ignoring it, but the second line made the air disappear from the room. "I just need to confirm some dates with you." Clara read it again. Dates. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't an insult. It was something worse. When someone asks for dates, they're not curious. They're trying to understand if there's room for two truths on the same day. Clara sat on the bed again. The phone trembled slightly in her hand, not from fear, but from recognition. Because in that second, even before responding, she already knew. If that conversation continued, nothing would be simple anymore, and the truth wouldn't come in a single message. Clara stared at the screen for a few seconds before responding. She could simply ignore it, could block, could pretend she hadn't seen it, but there was something about that message that didn't seem invasive. It was too careful. She took a deep breath and typed, "Hi, go ahead." The response came almost immediately. "I promise to be direct. I don't want confusion. I just need to know when you two started getting serious." Clara felt her stomach turn. It wasn't if they were together. It was when. She responded with the truth, as neutrally as possible. Approximate dates. November. More serious in December. Relationship made official now in January. There was a pause. 30 seconds. 40. Long enough for someone to check something already saved. Then the message arrived. "Thank you for responding. I'm so sorry." Clara frowned. Before she could ask why, another bubble appeared. "He called me my love on December 25th. The room seemed to get smaller. Clara read slowly. Once, twice, 3 times. Christmas. The night Raphael had said he was tired, that he'd go to sleep early, that he barely responded. She felt the immediate impulse to defend. Maybe it was old. Maybe it was a recycled conversation. Maybe it was just a way of speaking. But the next message left no room for maybe. The woman sent a screenshot, and there it was, his name, his photo, his message, with date, with time. Clara didn't cry. Not yet. She felt something stranger, a kind of internal silence, as if her body was preparing to receive something too big. She typed carefully, "He said he was with family." The response came softly, almost sadly. "He was with me. I didn't know about you." That hurt more than any insult, because Clara recognized that tone. It was the same tone she would use if she were in the other woman's place. No accusation, no dispute, no victory, just acknowledgement. Clara got up from the bed and started walking around the room, phone still in hand. Her brain tried to run faster than reality. She remembered every detail of that night. The short good night, the absence of messages, the way she had thought. Normal? It's Christmas. The woman in the DMs was named Julia. Julia explained little, only what was necessary. Said they had seen each other a few times, that she didn't think it was anything serious until he started talking about the future, about plans, about missing her. Said she felt strange when she saw Clara's video making the relationship official. Said she thought about ignoring it, but something wouldn't let her. "I preferred to reach out to you rather than pretend I didn't see it." Clara closed her eyes. It wasn't a villain on the other side of the screen. It was someone just as deceived as she was. Clara thanked her, said she needed to think. Julia responded that she understood, that she didn't want anything more than to clarify. Before saying goodbye, Julia wrote, "If you want to confirm anything else, I'll help." Clara put her phone on the bed, sat on the floor, leaned her back against the wall. The silence now was heavy. She thought about Raphael, thought about the way he always got uncomfortable when she went out alone, the way he asked too much, the way he seemed calm, as long as it was his way. The first impulse was to confront, send the screenshot, demand explanations, ask him to justify himself. But Clara didn't do that. Something inside her asked for more information, more clarity, more pieces before assembling the picture. She picked up her phone again, opened the conversation with Raphael. His last message was sweet. "Did you sleep well?" She didn't respond. Instead, she opened the calendar, started looking at dates, and then she remembered a small detail, almost insignificant at the time. On December 28th, Raphael had disappeared for a few hours in the late afternoon, said he was going to sleep, said he was exhausted. Clara had thought it was normal. Now it didn't seem so. She went back to the conversation with Julia and typed, "Do you remember if you talked to him on any other day, I could confirm." The response took a bit longer this time. When it arrived, it brought something Clara wasn't prepared to read. There was a day at the end of December. He said he was going to sleep early too. Clara felt the ground disappear. Which day? The response came short. December 28th. It was the same window of silence, the same time, the same excuse. Clara closed her eyes and rested her forehead on her knee. It wasn't an isolated mistake. It was a pattern beginning to emerge, and when patterns appear, they never come alone. Clara didn't respond to the message immediately. She left her phone, face down on the bed, as if, for a few seconds, she could pretend it didn't exist. But her body had already understood before her mind. Her heart wasn't racing. It was too quiet. It was the kind of internal silence that appears when reality begins to impose itself without asking permission. She got up, went to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and drank slowly. The automatic gesture only served to buy time. as if a few minutes could reorganize something already broken. December 28th hadn't been remarkable, and maybe that was the cruelest detail. Raphael had spent the day normally. They talked in the morning, laughed about something silly. In the middle of the afternoon, he warned that he was tired, that he'd disappear for a bit, sleep. Clara didn't question it. She never questioned. She believed in that kind of adult freedom where you don't need to monitor schedules or justify every absence. Now that absence had another name. Clara picked up her phone again and opened the conversation with Julia. She didn't ask if there was anyone else. She asked something simpler. "Do you know anyone else who was with him during that period?" The response took a few minutes. When it came with care. "I know a girl who was with him before me, but I don't know if it was still happening." Clara felt a brief pang in her chest. It wasn't surprise, it was confirmation. She responded, "Can you ask?" Julia agreed, said she would do it respectfully, that she didn't want to cause more pain than there already was. While waiting, Clara opened another conversation, old, almost forgotten. A girl she vaguely remembered seeing once, mentioned by Raphael as a friend from the past. Nothing much, just a distant presence. Clara typed a short, neutral message. "Hi, sorry to reach out of the blue. Did you happen to be with Raphael in December?" The response came in less than 5 minutes. "I did." Clara closed her eyes. "Did you know about me?" "No." The short word hit like a snap. The girl's name was Nina. Nina didn't make drama, didn't write a long text, didn't accuse. She sent screenshots, and the screenshots had something in common with the others. Dates, times, repeated phrases. Clara noticed the detail that hurt most. Raphael didn't improvise. He repeated the same declarations, the same excuses, the same strategic disappearances, as if he had learned a method. Nina explained that Raphael said he was almost done with someone, that he needed time, that things were complicated. Clara recognized the phrase. He had used something similar with her, just switching the roles. When Julia returned to the conversation, she confirmed. The girl from before still existed, and it wasn't just one. Clara sat on the bed again, now with her phone firm in her hands. She opened the Notes app, not to vent, to organize. She started writing November beginning, December, relationship requests, Christmas, disappearance, day 28, repeated silence, January, video discovery. Next to each date, a name. Clara didn't feel anger yet. She felt something colder. Clarity. She decided to talk to Raphael, not to confront, to observe. She called. He answered too quickly, like someone with nothing to hide. "Hi, love." The word sounded wrong. Clara kept her voice calm. "Were you with someone on Christmas?" There was a minimal pause, too short to be innocent, too long to be spontaneous. We were fighting, remember?" The response came ready. Clara didn't argue. "And on the 28th, another pause, another deflection. I slept. I was exhausted." Clara didn't raise her voice, didn't present evidence, just asked the final question. "How many, Raphael?" Silence. Not that silence of surprise, but the silence of someone calculating. When he responded, he confirmed everything without saying anything new. "I messed up." He didn't deny, didn't explain, didn't justify properly, just tried to minimize. Clara hung up. She stared at the black screen for a few seconds. There was no more doubt. The question had never been if he cheated on her. The question had always been how many versions of the truth he managed to sustain at the same time. And Clara knew. She still hadn't finished discovering. Clara didn't sleep that night. Not because she was crying, but because her body refused to shut down while her mind was still assembling the puzzle. It was like watching a movie in reverse, starting at the end and going back scene by scene, now with subtitles. She opened her phone again, shortly before 3 in the morning. There was a new message, no complete name, no photo, just an initial, L. The message was direct. "I don't want to appear. I don't want my name mentioned, but I need to confirm something with you." Clara responded, "Go ahead." Elle didn't apologize, didn't explain the reason for contact, went straight to the point. He's been doing this for a long time. That sentence didn't come with a screenshot. It came with context. Elle said she got involved with Raphael months before Clara appeared, that she believed he had ended things, that she believed him when he said he needed time alone. But there was never time alone. There was always someone else. He doesn't jump from relationship to relationship, he overlaps them. The word echoed in Clara's mind. Overlap. Elle explained that Raphael had a specific skill. He didn't create deep bonds. He created sensations. He made each woman feel special, chosen, unique, while keeping them all in orbit. It wasn't impulse. It wasn't emotional confusion. It was method. Clara felt something freeze inside, not because it was cruel, but because it was precise. She asked, "Did he talk about me?" The response took a while. When it came, it brought along a phrase Clara would never forget. "He said you were nice, but that you weren't all that." There was no exclamation, no judgment. The phrase was just there, dry. Clara closed her eyes. It wasn't the insult that hurt, it was the meaning. She realized that, for Raphael, people weren't whole. They were comparisons. He diminished one to inflate another, inflated another to keep the previous one insecure. That's how he kept himself at the center. Clara thanked Elle for her honesty, said she understood the decision not to expose herself. Before ending, Elle wrote something that confirmed what Clara already felt. "You weren't the first, and if you hadn't discovered now, you wouldn't be the last." When Clara put down her phone, there was no more room for illusion. It wasn't a recent mistake. It wasn't a bad phase. It wasn't, "we were fighting." It was a pattern that crossed years. She started remembering small details that, at the time, seemed irrelevant. The way Raphael hid his phone when she approached. The conversations he said he deleted because they were silly. The group of friends she could never really see. Once, Clara had asked to read something on his phone, something simple without suspicion. He turned the screen just enough to show and didn't let her scroll. At the time, she didn't insist. Now it made sense. Raphael wasn't hiding a conversation. He was hiding the system. Clara opened the conversation with him again. There were several unread messages, apologies, attempts at contact, vague promises. "I regret it. I don't want to lose you." "I was confused." Clara didn't respond. Not because she was speechless, but because she had already understood too much. She realized something she hadn't realized before. Raphael wasn't trying to explain. He was trying to regain control of the narrative, and Clara wasn't going to allow it. She opened the Notes app again, this time not to organize dates, to decide what she would do with the truth. She could expose everything, could send the screenshots, could tell names, times, cities. But Clara knew, screaming wouldn't be revenge. It would just be noise. She wanted something more precise, something that wouldn't give him space to victimize himself, something that would make the pattern clear without needing to explain. And it was there, sitting on the bed with the room still dark, that Clara had the idea. A sentence, a single sentence, short, clean, irrefutable. She wouldn't accuse, she would invite. Clara didn't write immediately. She let the idea mature for a few hours, like someone who knows that a poorly placed sentence can become a defense for someone who doesn't deserve it. She wanted something impossible to distort. No names, no direct accusations. Nothing that would allow him to say he was being treated unfairly. The sentence needed to work on its own. In the early afternoon, Clara opened the video she had posted the day before. The same video, the same contained smile, the same simple caption. She didn't delete anything, just added one line. "If you received 'I love you' from him in December, message me." Nothing more. No exclamation point, no context, no explanation. She took a deep breath and saved it. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Clara set her phone aside and tried to go on with her day, washed a cup, made the bed, opened the window. Then the phone started vibrating. One notification, then another, then several. Messages in her DMs, requests to talk. screenshots being sent without even needing to ask. The first one just said, "Hi, I think this is about the same person." The second, "I saw your video. I think we need to talk." The third was more direct. "He was talking to me in December too." Clara sat on the couch, the phone now heavy in her hands. She didn't respond immediately. She opened each message calmly. Read names, dates, times, everything matched. It was like watching a pattern reveal itself in real time. One woman said he promised to travel with her. Another told that he talked about moving in together. A third said he swore he was wrapping something old up. None knew about the others. None suspected. All had believed the same version, just changing the leading role. Clara felt something different from the initial pain, a cold lucidity. She realized she wasn't dealing with isolated betrayals. She was dealing with a character. Raphael didn't improvise feelings. He distributed lines, the same phrases, the same promises, the same excuses. It was as if he had learned, very early, that dividing attention gave more power than truly choosing someone. In less than 24 hours, Clara counted 5 women. 5. And then she understood something that made her breathe deeply. She wasn't the deceived one. She was the current one, the season, the version that was airing at that moment. When Clara realized this, something reorganized inside. She didn't feel like screaming or explaining herself or proving anything. The truth was already proving itself. Raphael tried to call, then sent long messages, tried to invert the narrative, said he was being exposed unfairly, that things were more complex, that Clara was exaggerating. She didn't respond, not because she was weak, but because she had already done what she needed to. The sentence was there, and so were the consequences. Clara noticed something curious. The less she said, the clearer everything became. She didn't need to convince anyone. The women talked among themselves, exchanged information, compared dates, laughed nervously at impossible coincidences. Some cried, others stayed silent, but all understood the same thing. There was no dispute between them. The problem was never who came first, it was who never chose anyone. That night, Clara received one last message. It wasn't an accusation, it wasn't drama, it was simple. "Thank you for not treating me like a rival." Clara responded with the same simplicity. "You never were." When she set her phone aside, she felt something unexpected. Relief, not because she had won, but because she had come out whole. She realized that Raphael's biggest mistake wasn't cheating. It was believing he could control the truth forever. And no one controls what needs to be divided to exist. Raphael realized too quickly that something had changed, not because Clara confronted him, but because she stopped responding. For someone like him, silence isn't absence, it's threat. The messages started polite. "We need to talk. This is out of context. I can explain." Clara read them all, didn't respond to any. Then the tone changed. "You're exposing me. This is unfair. You don't know what I was going through." Clara remained silent. Raphael called, once, twice, 5 times. Then he tried other channels, mutual friends, acquaintances, alternative profiles, as if by changing the messenger, he could regain control of the narrative. Clara watched it all with a calm she didn't know she had. She realized something essential. Raphael wasn't sorry. He was displaced. He had lost the comfortable place where he could be the center of all versions at the same time. Now, the versions were talking to each other, and when stories meet, the lie doesn't survive. One of the women told that he tried to minimize everything, said Clara was exaggerating, that she was too emotional, that it was a small thing. Clara recognized the move. It was the same mechanism as always. Diminish one to preserve his own image. But this time, it didn't work. Because the women had dates, and dates don't get emotional. Raphael tried something different. He sent a long message, one of those that seemed like a confession, but our negotiation, said he regretted it, that he never wanted to hurt anyone, that he was confused, that he needed help. Clara read it to the end, and noticed the absence of what really mattered. At no point did he ask how she was. He only asked what she would do with it all. She didn't respond, didn't block immediately. She wanted to observe a bit more, wanted to see how far he would go when he had no audience. That's when the final attempt came. "I lost everything." Clara almost smiled, because that wasn't true. He hadn't lost everything. He had lost control over who believed him. And that, for someone like Raphael, is unbearable. Clara finally blocked him, not with anger, with decision. In doing so, she felt something curious. It wasn't explosive liberation. It was silence. A good silence. She realized she didn't need to explain anything to anyone. The women had already understood, and more importantly, so had she. Clara went back to the notes app, not to write about him, but to write about herself. She wrote down simple things. It wasn't wrong intuition. It was missing information. Love doesn't ask you to diminish yourself to fit. Control never comes disguised as care by accident. She realized how gentle she had been with herself throughout all of this. She didn't call herself naive, didn't blame herself for believing. She believed because the story she was told was convincing, and that says more about who lied than about who trusted. That night, Clara slept. Not a deep sleep, but real rest. The next day, she woke up to an unexpected message. It was from one of the women. "He tried to blame me, said I ruined everything." Clara responded, "He ruined it first. We just turned on the light." She realized there was no rivalry there. There was recognition, and that was rare. Clara understood something important. When a woman refuses to compete, the game ends. Raphael didn't lose Clara because she left. He lost because she understood. The impact didn't come right away. It came days later when everything was already too quiet. Clara noticed this one ordinary morning while making coffee. The water boiled, the smell rose, the world went on as usual. But something in her was a few seconds behind her body. It was as if her mind was still returning from a distant place. She sat at the table with the cup in her hands and stared at nothing. She wasn't thinking about him. She was thinking about time, about how, in just over a month, someone managed to cross so many areas of her life without leaving visible marks, and yet cause deep damage. There wasn't a specific scene to remember. There wasn't a day that summarized everything. The trauma was made of small details. The phone vibrating, the anxiety without reason, the feeling that something could collapse at any moment. Clara realized she started reviewing old conversations, not to feel nostalgic, but to identify signs, and she found them. The way he always needed to know where she was, the way he asked questions that seemed like care, but ended in demands, the way he complimented and then diminished someone. She hadn't seen it at the time because nothing came with violence. Everything came with too much softness. Clara understood something important. Some people don't hurt with screams. They hurt with repetition. She started to feel the real fatigue, not the fatigue of the body, but of the mind that was forced to reorganize entire reality in a few days. There was a night when she woke up startled, with no specific dream, just with the alert feeling turned on. It was strange to admit, but it was true. Even after blocking him, her body still reacted as if he could appear at any moment. She wondered how this was possible, how someone manages to plant fear without raising their voice, how someone manages to confuse without blatantly lying. The answer came simple but hard. He never promised stability. He promised intensity. And intensity, when it ends, leaves emptiness. Clara started doing something new. Instead of asking herself, "How did I not see?" she started asking, "What did I learn?" She learned that love doesn't require surveillance, that too many explanations usually hide something, that whoever needs to be the center of everything doesn't know how to share truth. She realized she wasn't sad about losing Raphael. She was sad about having believed in a version of the future that never existed. That hurt more, because losing someone is different from losing an idea. With time, Clara stopped reviewing screenshots, stopped retelling the story to herself, but something remained. Greater attention to her own limits, a new sensitivity to certain behaviors. She didn't close herself off, but she became more precise. And that wasn't bitterness, it was maturity. One day, while walking down the street, Clara realized she was smiling alone, not from extreme happiness, but from relief. She thought, I got out early, and that made a difference. Because she could have stayed more months, could have believed more, could have waited for a ring, a change, a better promise. But she left when the truth appeared, even if it was worse. Clara understood something that none of the women involved said out loud, but all felt. There were no winners or losers. There were survivors of a story that wasn't theirs, and that changes everything. Life didn't go back to normal, and Clara realized she didn't want it to. A few weeks later, she noticed small changes, almost imperceptible to anyone looking from the outside. She started choosing better where to put her energy. She took longer to respond to messages that demanded too much. She learned not to explain her boundaries. Before, Clara had the habit of justifying herself. Now, she just decided. There was no speech about overcoming, no promise of never again. There was fine-tuning. She went back to doing simple things alone, walking without headphones, sitting in a cafe without looking at her phone, observing people without imagining stories. She realized how much she had disconnected from herself, trying to be too understanding. With Raphael, she had been patient, careful, maturely silent, but she realized something essential. She confused maturity with excessive tolerance, and that wouldn't happen again. One day, a friend asked if she still thought about him. Clara responded without hesitating, not as a person, as a lesson. And it was true. Raphael became an internal reference, not a ghost. She could now identify the signs that had previously gone unnoticed. People who always position themselves as victims, stories that change depending on the audience. Jealousy disguised as care. Clara didn't become hard, she became clear. She realized that many women around her had similar stories, not identical, but close. Short relationships that left long marks, charming people who disappeared when confronted with their own truth. And something curious happened. Clara stopped feeling alone, because when a story is told with honesty, others find courage to exist too. She received messages weeks later, some saying, "This happened to me," others just thanking her for writing that simple sentence. "If you received 'I love you' from him in December, message me." Clara never responded to all of them, but she read them, and each message confirmed something important. It wasn't an isolated case, it was a silent social pattern. People who prefer to multiply stories rather than sustain one. People who don't choose because they don't know how to lose any possibility. Clara realized she didn't need to carry this as eternal trauma. It was memory. It was a mark, but it wasn't prison. She went back to trusting with criteria, went back to smiling with presence, went back to believing, but now in something different. Not in promises, in coherence, and that changed everything. Clara never spoke to Raphael again, not out of pride, not out of revenge, but because there was nothing left to clarify. She understood that some conversations don't close cycles, they just prolong confusion, and she was no longer willing to live inside poorly told stories. With time, his name lost weight, memories lost color, questions lost urgency. What remained was something more subtle and more valuable: discernment. Clara began to notice how, for a long time, women were taught to interpret contradictory signals as emotional complexity, when in reality, it was often just incoherence. She thought about how many times she heard phrases like, "He's confused," "He's afraid of commitment," "He just needs time." And now she saw everything with different eyes. Some people aren't confused. They're too comfortable not choosing. Clara didn't come out of that story harder. She came out more honest with herself. She learned that whoever wants to be there shows up whole, whoever needs to hide versions can't sustain any, and whoever tries to control everything loses the moment truth circulates. She never needed to scream, never needed to expose names, never needed to prove anything beyond what was already evident. The truth didn't need to be pushed. It simply found space, and when it didn't destroy Clara. It just revealed what was already there. Today, Clara knows she didn't lose a relationship. She freed herself from a role that was never written for her. It wasn't rejection, it was early exit, and that made all the difference. She thought about something she never said out loud, but that now made sense. Some truths hurt because they arrive late. Others hurt because they arrived too early. Hers arrived early. And because of that, despite the impact, she came out whole. Maybe you've lived through something similar, maybe not as extreme, maybe in silence, maybe without screenshots, without proof, without external confirmation, but with that uncomfortable feeling that something didn't fit. If there's one thing this story teaches, it's this. You're not exaggerating for feeling, you're not weak for trusting, and you're not naive for believing what you're told until they prove otherwise. The truth can be worse than betrayal, because sometimes it reveals that the entire person was a character, and yet surviving that is possible. Have you ever discovered a truth worse than betrayal? That one that completely changes the way you see someone or yourself. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Stories We Tell, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us keep creating stories about strength, self-respect, and new beginnings, because stories that touch the heart deserve to be told and remembered. Thank you for being here.